Hi, and welcome to Bold and Blissful Women, where we help you connect with your feminine essence to creating an extraordinary life and love you desire. Today we have Sophia Lennox. She's going to be talking to us something really important around forgiving. We're a family dynamic and relationships in general. So welcome, Sophia. I'm really excited to have you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. It is a lovely feeling to be on this summit with you alongside many other experts on the topic of love and happiness and joy and empowerment. I couldn't think of a better way to spend an afternoon, so thank you.
Yes. And the topic of forgiveness is so important. It's a topic that can definitely make most of us uncomfortable at first, and it brings up a lot of hitting emotions. So I think it's a really delicate topic for us to talk about today. I'm very excited. So can you share with the audience a little bit about yourself? What is it that you're currently doing, and a little bit of your story?
Absolutely, thank you. So mainly I work with women around confidence, around self-love, around feeling empowered and going out and really bringing the very best of themselves into the world. And what I find again and again is that so many of the women that I work with, these beautiful, sensitive souls, have something in their past that has really knocked their confidence. And sometimes that very thing is what they need to be able to let go of, to be able to forgive, and to be able to move forward. So for me, I've been on the kind of personal growth journey, if you like, for more than 2 decades already. I know I look very young, but honestly, more than 2 decades. And on that journey, I've really come to realize that you have to be able to let go of the past. You have to be willing to see things from a completely different perspective from where you started out. And I had a very lovely upbringing in the Highlands of Scotland, which is where the Loch Ness Monster is from. I'm sure many people might have heard of that infamous creature. And I wasn't immune to any kind of confidence or self-esteem knockbacks growing up. I was bullied a lot as a child. I was the youngest of 2. And I was very, very self-conscious, very shy. And it took me a long time to even come out of that shell and be able to start recognising that, I'm a pretty magnificent woman in my own right. I just needed to let myself come out more. And then I went to university. I went in 5 years of marriage, I find out that my husband had been unfaithful to me for pretty much the last year of our marriage. And so, as any woman listening to this can imagine, my whole life pretty much fell apart. Not to be too dramatic, it felt like I had no idea where to start all over again. I'd lost so much of myself in that marriage. And so my journey to forgiveness really began there. And I know a lot of women want revenge and they want to make sure that their ex is never happy. All these kind of various tactics, if you like, to be able to overcome that pain. But for me, I absolutely chose the path of compassion, the path of forgiveness, and the path of healing myself so that I could go back out into the world as the woman that I really genuinely came into this world to be. So it's been a phenomenal journey for the past 6 years, and one that I've helped many other women on since then, both to restart their life after a romantic relationship, and sometimes also just to forgive other past hurts and pains that have come along in their life. And trust me, when you let go of that baggage, you're so light, you literally can't do anything but fly.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And a question comes up for me as I heard you talking. I personally believe, or at least what I've experienced in my life, is that, you have to really focus on forgiving yourself first, right? So, but I want to hear from you, if you're going, let's say, through a breakup, I know that we're going to talk about different, relationship dynamics, whether it's family and all that sort of stuff. But if we start a little bit with love, who should you focus on forgiving first? Your partner, yourself? Is it a little bit of both? How do you suggest that a person goes through that process?
Well, the first thing I love to suggest women do, because for me it's proven to be the most powerful, is to take a step back quite often we think if we can very quickly say, I forgive you, that all of the pain just falls away. But those are just words. We're just being all intellectual about it. And actually, we really need to feel the softness in our body. We need to feel our hearts opening up again to be able to actually come forth with that forgiveness and to really understand it. So initially, my belief was that I needed to forgive my ex-husband. But as I started to get into the process, I realised that the person who really needed the forgiveness was me. And I needed to forgive myself for getting myself into that relationship. I lost so much trust in myself that I could make good decisions or that I was making the right decisions in my life. I lost trust in whether or not I could trust anybody else. It wasn't that I thought, some women can go into men are just so untrustworthy. But for me, that wasn't what it was about. For me, it felt like I couldn't trust myself to know who was trustworthy. So it all came back on me. And so that personal experience, and then obviously with my professional coaching expertise and experience, 100% we need to forgive ourselves for past mistakes. We need to acknowledge that we did the very best that we could with the information that we had at that point, but also to be able to soften back into knowing that whatever happens in life, we're going to be there for ourselves. Because how often do women just self-abandon? Everything has got too painful, we're just going to shut down, can't face it, we're going to drink a little bit too much red wine, we're going to go out clubbing, we're going to work too hard. And actually, when we just come back and we allow ourselves to soften, to be gentle, to really get in touch with where the hurt is, then that's the point that we can begin to move forward again. So to be really specific, sometimes, yes, it's in tandem. We might forgive the other person and ourselves at the same time, but ultimately it needs to come from a feeling as to what it is that needs to happen next. And that's powerful work. But once you get into the process of forgiveness, you can really begin to feel what it is that needs to happen to be able to move forwards.
You saw me writing. It's because three questions came up as you were talking. So I was like, let me get this now. Okay, so for me personally, I've seen that when there's any sort of loss, right, whether it's loss of a partner, a family member, or, a friendship, anything, in any given shape or form, what personally happens is that as you didn't know, or it was the first time you experienced it, you're not really prepared to all of the emotions that are going to come in. And I can resonate with what you were saying about, losing yourself. I actually, interestingly enough, had a conversation yesterday with one of my best friends. My dad passed away 5 years ago, and I didn't know what that entire process looked like. And I realized, and I've been on a journey on healing it, but I realized that I had lost myself in the process, which is kind of why I started this whole journey. But the most difficult part of that journey was to forgive myself for losing myself when I realized, right? When I realized it, because there was a part of me that was upset that I didn't realize it. But like you said, and I would like for us to go a little bit deeper into this, I didn't know any better, right? So could you talk a little bit about that, the first stage of a woman fully accepting and releasing all that energy that she needs to forgive? I know that it's recognizing that you didn't know any better. So if we could expand a little bit on that, that would be great.
Fantastic. You and I are pretty much bouncing off each other now. I have about 10 answers came into my head.
That's amazing.
So essentially, the process of forgiveness is not linear, just as the process of grief is not linear. So there's no such thing as saying, I'm going to forgive this bit and then this bit and then this, because as we start to uncover something more and more, quite often we find, oh, well, now I realise there's more here I need to work with, and then there's more here. So actually it's a kind of cycle that goes round and round all of the time. And sometimes we think that we're taking a step back when actually we're just going deeper rather than broader. So that's a really important thing to think about when it comes to forgiveness. What I also recognised when I first separated from my husband was that so many of my friends, my family, people around me were very quick to condemn his actions. You know, he was the one who was unfaithful. Now, as you and I both know, when you work as a coach, when you work in the world of personal development, whatever you're saying on the outside is so often a projection of what's really happening on the inside. So rather than me point the finger of blame, which as my yoga teacher always says, when you point the finger at anybody, I'll try not to point directly at you, you have 3 fingers pointing back at yourself. So while we're quick to point the blame at somebody else, we also need to look closer to see where the blame is. So when I started to look at my marriage and say, why was my husband unfaithful to me? I realised that the person who had been truly unfaithful to me was me. So whilst I had not gone out and committed infidelity, I hadn't gone and had a relationship with another man, what I had done was give up a huge amount of myself for that marriage. And so I 100% became lost in that marriage. I went from having a very successful career as a radio journalist, owning my own flat, my own car. I gave up all of that and moved countries to be with my husband and follow his career. And then I took still a good career, but not the career that I was really passionate about being involved in. I dressed differently, we socialised with different people. Overnight, it was as if my life had just completely gone bye-bye and I had stepped into somebody else's life. So for me, that whole process of recognising who I was and where I had disappeared to was part of coming home to myself again. And that was a difficult journey to take in itself because it takes confidence, as we know, to come home to yourself, but it really takes confidence to forgive. And so the people who think that forgiveness is for the weak or for somebody who's going to get walked all over again or that you're too quick to forgive, I would 100% say the opposite. It takes such absolute guts to be able to say to somebody else, I forgive you. It's not that you're condoning what they've done or accepting it in any way. It's about recognising that the only person who is hurting when there is still forgiveness to be given is the person who is holding on to the grudge or holding on to the bitterness. And obviously, when we've had an experience like that, and I was just, I forget now, even 30 or 31 when I got divorced. So it's good on these things anymore, then you know that you've moved much further forwards. It just took a long time for me to begin to process and understand what to do. I was too nervous to go and ask for help because I didn't know what these emotions were or really how to deal with them. So being able to ask for the support when you need it, and sometimes just that might be turning in. You know, if you're the kind of person who's into the universe and the energy and God, then maybe you're turning completely inwards and saying, help me here. And maybe some also reaching out and saying, I don't know how to deal with this. There has to be somebody else out there who can help me. And there are many people, as you have on this summit, talking about ways that we can go forward and help. So yeah, it takes huge confidence to be able to forgive and to move on.
Yeah, I love the twist that this conversation just took now. What would you say is the biggest reason to actually forgive someone?
To move forwards. Any pain that we have, any hurt that we have in our life, we have a choice. Just as I have this little tin of lip balm on my desk, we have the choice to either take this pain and this hurt, to look at it, to understand it, to feel the weight of it, to feel how irritating that would be if we had to carry it around all day long and never put it down. And then to realise that even in this very minute, I have the choice just to put it down and to be able to move forward. And it literally frees up your energy, your movement, your heart. You're no longer held back by that one thing that you've been with. And when we think about pain or hurt or bitterness or anything that, you know, where we feel like we were wronged, it's also recognizing that if we're doing the very best that we can with the information that we have, isn't the other person doing the same? And so if they didn't know any better, why would we continue to direct hate or poison or upset or hold any kind of grudge against them? I think there's a famous proverb, I think it's a Chinese proverb, which is, if you are going to seek revenge, then you better dig 2 graves. And also, I think this was the Dalai Lama, I should really check out all my quotes, who said that holding on to bitterness or resentment is like drinking a cup of poison and expecting the other person to suffer. So it's so true. You know, if I was still bitter or resentful towards my ex, it's not affecting him. He doesn't care. He's moved on. He's happy in his life. The only person that would be held back and who would be suffering would be me. And it's exactly the same for the women that I work with. So being able to forgive is, I like to think of it as detoxing the heart.
Yes.
And it just feels beautiful to be able to move forward with that softness and that clarity that, you know, that's in your past. It doesn't have to be in your future. So why would we keep reliving it or keep being there?
Yes, beautiful. And what came up for me as you were talking is that, you know, you mainly do it for your own well-being, right? I always say to my clients, you know, always look within, no matter if you're in a relationship, you're single, you know, what's going on. Sometimes I feel like we have boundaries, and then if we see that those boundaries, you know, on the outside, like people are not respecting them, just go within and see, you know, how are you not respecting yourself? How are you not respecting your own boundaries? And you will start to see things shift on the outside. So here's a question. You mentioned that if the person didn't know any differently, why should we, you know, throw or impose hate on them? What happens, let's say if we move a little bit away from, you know, romantic relationships. I see it happen all the time in, you know, family dynamics. Whenever you're in this process of finding yourself or pursuing your new passion, you know, something that's really meaningful for you, and sometimes your family doesn't understand, and you keep explaining it over and over again, and you think that they're hearing you, but then they keep giving you comments or situations or things that make you feel attacked. Does that family member, in this case, still doesn't know any better? And how should we handle those interactions?
Beautiful question. I don't know a single person on a personal growth journey who does not ask an example of this question, because it's such a big thing. So the first thing I would say is seek first to understand and then to be understood. So it's very easy for us to rush out and say, you never understand me, I'm doing this because it makes me feel good and you should support me, and all I ask is that you let me go on my own journey and blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. And we get so caught in our own heads, when actually so much of the time the people around us who seem like they're not fully supportive, they sometimes just don't get what it is that we're doing or why. For anybody who's not already involved in the world of personal growth, of self-development, it seems like the people on that path feel that they're broken or that they're not enough. And what I say again and again to all my clients, or to anyone even considering doing this work, you are not broken, you do not need to be fixed. And sometimes I compare it right back to a slice of chocolate cake. The chocolate cake on its own is perfect, just as we are in this world, perfect. But a little dash of cream or ice cream on the top, isn't that even better? And isn't that a nicer thing to have? If we can be the very best and we can really embellish ourselves in that way and go out and bring more joy and more happiness, why would we just be the chocolate cake? You know, we can be so much more than that. So yeah, seek first to understand and then to be understood. Also to recognise what is it that's being brought up in us, or in the person who is having those feelings at the point where they think, nobody understands me, because actually they don't understand you. That's not a huge deal in itself, but what is it that you're making that mean? Are we making it mean that they don't love us, that they want to keep us small or unhappy or miserable? You know, what is it that we think their lack of approval means to us? And what is it that we need to be able to do to view that differently? Another really important thing is that often the people who are, no, I don't want to say against, because that's too strong a word. I don't know anyone that's been, held back from going to a self-development seminar, but anybody who feels like they're not being supported, what is the person who's not supporting you going through? Are they fearful? And I see this a lot in the partners sometimes of some of the women that I work with, if they're in a relationship, is that they're scared. They have this beautiful woman that they absolutely love and they want to be with. And then one day she goes off somewhere and comes back and says, I've got boundaries, you need to respect me. I can do what I want. I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to get a cleaner. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go and do la la la. And in their heads, they're hearing, she's trying to change everything in her life. Is there going to be a space for me? What's this going to mean? Is she still going to love me? She's going to meet somebody else. She's changing so much, I don't recognize her anymore. And so it can really bring up a lot of fear in the other person. And if they're not ready to come on that journey with you, then that's okay. Invite them to come with you. I know you think all this stuff is hokey cokey and it's a load of rubbish. Why don't you just come with me and see what you really think? And if they say no, that's fine. No, we don't need to. Well, look at it the other way. If we think that they're not accepting of our journey, then are we not disrespecting their choice for their journey? Because they're choosing not to be on that path of self-discovery at the moment. So it's really keeping your own side of the street clean and recognizing, I'm the one that's creating this issue, this problem. It's all in here. It's not there. So
right.
There's more work for us to do when we get that. And that's one other thing I always add to that is when these things come up, they're testing our commitment to the journey that we're on. And also, they're hugely important because we get to see where our wounds are. We get to see where we really need approval, where we need support or permission from an outside source. And it helps us to move forward and to develop into the person that we want to be. Do we want to be somebody who says, I have to have their support before I can do it? I don't. I love to have their support. But a phrase that I've used in the past when I've been in relationships that have happened is that this is my choice. This is what I'm going to do. And I would really love and welcome your support. And that's it. I'm not asking for permission and I'm not telling you they have to give it to me. And that's massive for so many of my clients too. So I hope, does that answer your question?
It brought up a lot more questions.
We'll be here till midnight.
Yes, definitely. The main thing that I thought was respecting each other's decision, respecting each other's path, respecting a person's desire not to be on a road to self-discovery right now, or trying to impose your way of self-discovery to your partner, to your family, to whoever, right? So what would be the best way you would communicate to your partner, to your family, that they respect your desires and not, trespass that boundary in continuing to question you about the decision you just made?
Sorry, I missed that last bit, Nicole.
Questioning you on the decision that you just made. Like, how do you ask them? How would you have that conversation, right? Especially with family members, where they keep questioning you and you keep advancing with that questioning. Like, how do you react to that, or how do you respond to that without, being calm, being connected instead of being defensive?
Absolutely. Well, I'm a very peaceful person, so I tend to be a bit of a conflict avoider, but not in the sense that I won't deal with the issue, just in the sense that I will never go in and lock horns with somebody, because in my experience, all that does is make both of you upset and churned up, and then you don't get anywhere with the situation. So something that I find when I first stepped out onto this journey was literally, if I was reading some kind of book around personal growth, I would leave it on the coffee table, on the kitchen, bedside table, in the car, leave it anywhere. 9 times out of 10, when I came back, somebody would be reading my book. Whether that was my mum or my dad or my partner or a friend, people were always curious to see what it was that I was doing. And when they start to realise that you're not trying to change the person that they know, all you're actually doing is evolving. You're still the same at the core. There's just more natural self being allowed to come forward and to be expressed. Then that helps them to see everything in a completely different way. Also, think about the ways that you connect with that person. And what I find in the past is that the people who object to your journey the most, who really object to your evolution, to your decision to be positive, a brilliant mindset, are the people who connect with you through negativity. So maybe they're the ones who are used to sitting there saying, "Oh, Nicole, you hate your job, I hate my job too, and this happens, and we're always late, and we have to stay back late, and the pay's not good, and there was no car parking out there. Oh, my man, he drives me crazy." And then suddenly when you move to this positive slant, they're saying to you, "Oh, isn't the weather horrible? I went to get a drink and they had nothing in the cooler." And instead of saying, "That sucks, that is really bad," say, "Oh, never mind, let's go here instead." But they're so used to connecting with that person from a negative or a toxic place that it scares them that they're going to lose that connection that they have with you. And so that's another way of recognizing what is the connection that I have and how can we make that more comfortable. One of my favourites is to walk with somebody, whether that's a friend or a parent, anyone who's kind of objecting to your journey. If they're important enough for you to want to really keep them in your life and you love them and it's coming from a good place, as opposed to, "I'm doing this and you should do it too," which is a very different place. So if we are really genuinely looking to save that connection and to build on that connection, then it's really nice to go for a walk with them. Because when we're moving our body, our mind has no choice but to think in a different way from if we're locked down in the same coffee shop that we sit in, or if we're in the same work scenario, and just be able to chat to them a little bit and say, "What have you been up to? What are you doing?" And then very, non-attached to what they say way, just be able to say, "Right now, this is what I'm working on, and it just feels amazing, and here's why. Here's what I've learned, and here's how I'm using it to change my life." And people learn again and again from positive behaviour in a way that's contagious, not in a way that we just tell them. So if I was just to sit here and teach you a whole load of things about forgiveness, but actually I also had a picture of my ex-husband that I was sticking pins into, what's the point in that? It's all intellect. So we literally see no picture, no pins either. We literally need to be able to lead by example. And not just say, "This is fantastic," because if you do, somebody nearby will say, "You're brainwashed." So when we can say, "This is fantastic, and here's how my life's changed," and you're doing it, and you're living it, and they see that you're happy, they'll come round, and they'll get onto that journey with you. So it's massive.
This brought up another question, right?
My favorite.
Yes. So I love that you were mentioning how it's very important to mention, this is how it has changed my life, right? Or this is helping me improve. What do you do, or how do you have that conversation, or should you have that conversation if you still haven't seen tangible results yet, right? I know that that's a lot more difficult to explain to a family member and all this sort of stuff. Well, so essentially you're saying, if you know that you're on the path and this is a good path for you to be on, it feels like a good path, but you haven't got the results yet, how do we justify it? Yeah. Is that Yeah, the
So
results
if
are
it feels
internal so
good,
far.
so if it feels good to you, then why wouldn't we continue on that path? And why would we feel the need to justify? Because when we go to a place of justifying, we're trying to make ourselves right and let the other person see that they're wrong. So if we can come from a place of, this is what I'm doing, and hey, you're right, maybe it's never going to work, but I believe that it is. Just like I believe that the sun is going to come up tomorrow, and right now it's dark, but you can't see that it's going to come. You know, sometimes we just have to have a bit of faith. And to them, you know, I've given myself 6 months to make whatever this change is, whether it's a business result or whether it's to take up tango lessons or go ice skating or rollerblading, whatever it is that you're looking to do in life. Give yourself a bit of a time frame to be able to work with, and then say to them, I know that I'm going to do this. I would love for you to come with me, because when we're both doing this, we're so much stronger. But if you don't want to come on this journey with me, I'm going to do it, and I would just love to have that support. So they're not seeing results. Who are the results for? You know, if you're feeling them, you're not on the journey of personal growth for somebody else, or else we'd be calling it partner growth or mother growth or father growth. It's personal growth, it's self-development. And so, yeah, I'm coming up with all these images in my mind today. When we talk about planting carrots in the ground, and we say, first of all, you think that there's nothing there. And then you just see this little tuft of green stuff popping out of the ground. And you say, oh, well, that's going to be a tiny carrot. What's the point in that? Look, there's nothing there to see. And then you pull the carrot out of the ground, and it's like this size. So much of the work, especially when it comes to forgiveness, when it comes to confidence, when it comes to personal growth, is below the surface to start with.
Yeah.
And by the time we come out the top, we're just blow everybody away.
Right, that's so important. Would you say it's essential, at least in a partnership, romantic partnership, that both both are working or doing their self-development work in their own way? Or does that, like, if one is doing it and the other one is doing it, does that create any sort of different or impact in a relationship? What would you recommend?
It's definitely harder, and I can speak from personal experience, when one person is very much into self-development and the other person just isn't. That's harder, because if you're not growing, then you're dying. And so if one of you is growing more and more and the other person is staying in the same place, then automatically you're going to grow apart in some way. But we also need to remember that as women, we are not the alarm clock. You know, we're the person who goes through and wakes up the children in the morning. Yes, of course we are. But we're not the person who has to go around saying, wake up, there's a better way to live, wake up. You know, we don't need to give ourselves that role. It's just our job to continue doing what we believe in and watch other people come along and follow us. Now, I had a beautiful relationship a few years ago now with a man who at first was really not interested in any of this stuff. If I said something like Tony Robbins to him, he'd go, oh, I can't stand Tony Robbins. He's all wah, 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 all the time. And now he'll send me emails saying, thank you so much. You've helped change my life. He goes to yoga, he goes to meditation, he is working through A Course in Miracles. He's doing beautiful work on himself. Now, at the time, he was beginning to get more interested in it, but I wasn't in that relationship to make him do the work. Some part of me was, and obviously I was in that relationship because I loved him and we respected each other, but there was also a lot more work for me to do on myself to be loving and accepting of the person around me. Now, if we're talking about unconditional love and we're talking about self-development work, we need to be able to take the ego out of it and not say, I'm doing this, I need your approval and you must do it too. We need to put more love into it and say, okay, I love what I'm doing. It's making huge changes in my life. And I love and respect that this isn't your path right now. And maybe they're going to come round. Maybe they're not. But either way, nobody gets out of this life alive. So I think just able to create more fun and more space. And how many times do we start doing the inner work and we think, this is hard, you know, I've found this part of myself I just don't like, and I've been journaling and nothing's changing, and oh, it's so hard. Nobody wants to do that. That looks difficult. That looks hard. Nobody's going to say, oh, hi, Sophia, can I sit with my journaling and cry for half an hour? No, nobody wants to come and do that. So we can be light-hearted, we can have fun with the work that we're doing. You're like the Pied Piper. Everybody else just wants to come and get on board with you.
Can you repeat a little bit of what you just said at the end? Because like it got really weird at the end. So I know that, the audience didn't get
it. So essentially, if we are, if we're presenting the work that we're doing in a way that makes it difficult or challenging or deadly serious, if other people think that personal growth is about sobbing into their journal for half an hour every day, nobody wants to come and do that. But people can see that the work can be light-hearted and fun, and it can come from a place of love and be able to look in the mirror and not say, Sophia, you look tired today and you didn't finish that newsletter yesterday. When you move on to a place that you can look in the mirror and say, you look gorgeous and you're doing important work and it's going to happen whenever it needs to happen, that's when you become like the Pied Piper, and everybody wants some of that energy that you have, some of that excitement and enthusiasm for changing not just your world, but the worlds of everybody else around you. And so the very best thing you can do when it comes to personal growth is to lead by example and to have the amount of self-belief that you're expecting other people to have in you. So rather than saying, you need to believe I can do this, we need to believe we can do this, and when we do, they will.
That's amazing. That's beautiful. I think that at the end of the day, people, when they see you change, is that they become curious, right? Or they see that they're witnessing those transformations, but it's never really just through your words. People are analyzing you, the way that you show up, everything. And that's kind of what people tell you. Like, well, at least personally with me, when I went through my transformation, when my dad passed away, I used to be very negative. I used to be very angry. Like before that, that was who I was back then. So people saw that transformation that for me seemed very natural. I didn't even realize what was going on. But, looking back, I can clearly see it. And people tell me, well, like Nicole, like you always look so blissful. It's not that, my life is perfect all the time. It's just the way that I show up now. It's totally different than, reacting in rage. So I think that's very important, is because people saw the way that I changed and the way that I, completely transformed the way that I showed up in different situations, is that people were inspired to do their own sort of personal work. Like even my mom, my family, they're all coming around. So, but in their own timing. That's the most important thing. In their own timing. And
also, it's recognizing that there's always going to be people who don't necessarily love who you are and what you're doing. When I've been at my most miserable in life in the past, there was people who didn't rate what I was doing and who didn't want to be around me. And when I've been at my most happiest and buoyant, and it's not even, I kind of don't want to use the words transformed or changed, because it is more of an evolution. It's more of an emergence of who you've always been. And so when I really started to embody that, and I stopped just going with the flow, I let go of the office politics of, no, I'm bored, we don't get paid enough, and the lunch breaks aren't long enough, and he said this and she said that. I let go of all of that, and I stepped out completely from my 9-to-5 role and set up my own business after a trip via India and Nepal for almost a year. So I really, in a big way, just said, enough. I don't want that life anymore, and I'm choosing not to have it. Not everybody needs to make such big decisions, but that was. And even a couple of years after that, I added friends on Facebook who I hadn't seen since my 9-to-5 days, a few years earlier. And she sent me an email that says, I just need to know, are you really happy? And I said, yeah, I am really happy. Like, what are you talking about? Am I really happy? Well, I just need to know, because you're not the person that I remember you being. I remember you being much more judgmental, much more annoyed, irritated by things. And now you've got this whole Dalai Lama persona going on, and you're all zen. What's it really all about? And I thought, wow. So she thinks that the old me that was really irritated and like complaining about stuff was the real me. And the me that is right back to a point where they can do what they want and they can do what they want. I'm doing what I want and I'm not harming anybody in what I'm doing. For her to be able to come back and still think that that was the wrong way around was just crazy to me. And so I literally just responded and said, yeah, it's great. And then she said, I think if I came out for a cup of coffee with you and you were this happy, I might be sick. And I said, well, that's okay. We probably shouldn't have that coffee. Now, a couple of years earlier, I might have felt really bad about that. I thought, gosh, she doesn't care about me. She doesn't love me. She doesn't respect me. I need to go back to complaining to be able to be accepted. And then it was a matter of, oh, that's okay. She's not on that journey yet. I can invite her. She can come if she wants. She doesn't want to. Let go. Move on. There's more people ahead for us to get in touch with, to connect with. Doesn't mean we don't love the people that we're leaving behind. It just means that they have a choice. We've invited them to come. They either come or they don't. Simple.
I think what's very important to mention from what you were saying is that, the decision to release somebody, like accepting that they may not be in that journey right now, is a decision that comes from love, like for yourself first and foremost, and for that person too. Because the act of releasing is an act of love instead of an act of judgment, right? So you refuse to be in that dynamic where, this person is judging you, then you're judging them. And it's just, this really vicious cycle that's not helping anyone. And in my case, personally, and what I've seen also with my clients is that when they go through this process and they start to change, people come up like, the friends or the family members that we have that approach us and, gave us those sort of comments, is that sometimes this evolution, as you were saying, that's happening inside of you is, calling onto them. And they may, say all these sort of hurtful things at you to see if you come back to what's normal. And then when you don't, there's that inner battle inside of them, but that's a whole part of the process of their own journey. But you already did what you had to do in that journey. Just inspire them from afar even. And just, releasing them. I think that's very important. Like nine times out of 10, whoever criticized me or, pointed fingers at me and told me, well, you didn't used to be this way, et cetera, and all these sort of stuff, they went on in their own path of self-discovery and they have been changing and have changed themselves, right? But I never got myself involved because it's not my job to control somebody else's life, right? That's not helpful.
And so often, all we really need to do is take a look at our own level of personal growth in terms of how we're responding to that situation. So maybe 10 years ago, I might have hidden my self-development books. And I didn't want people to know I had audio CDs and I believed in the universe and in energy. And it was like, oh, somebody would come in and go to my bookcase and I'd be like, oh, why don't you come and look over here? And I'd be trying to distract them. And now it's like, this is who I am. This is what I believe in. I'm not asking you to believe in it. They wear blue socks. I don't wear blue socks. They're not asking me to believe in their blue socks. So it's just different levels. So it's recognizing, what are we making it mean when somebody isn't fully supportive of what we're doing? Does it bring up fear or doubt in us that we are on the wrong path, that we're beyond change? A classic example for me, and I don't know if you've heard this phrase, where people will say, if you want to believe you're spiritual, try going home for Christmas.
Yes. 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 It's
easy to go out to a place where nobody knows you and be like, oh, I'm holier than thou, I'm Nicole, I'm fantastic, I'm amazing, everybody loves me, I'm so zen, I'm so confident, I'm so calm. And then you go home for Christmas and your sister steals your shoes. You're like, give me back those shoes. Because you've gone back to how you were 20 years ago. And so I remember one Christmas with my mum, and my mum and I have a beautiful relationship. My mum says something to me, and I snapped in an old pattern, the way that I would have when I was a teenager. And my mum said to me, "Be spiritual to your mother." And in that moment, wow, it absolutely landed on me. It's like, yeah, it's one thing knowing all of this stuff, but we have to be able to feel it. We have to know when somebody says something to us and our shoulders go up and we're like this and we're, no, don't talk to me, and our face is frozen and locked. And then we have to sense, okay, so what if I just had an open heart to that? What if I really felt the words and decided what a good response was going to be? And personally, as often as I remember, and I'm by no means an enlightened soul, so it's not every minute of every day, I like to taste my words before I say them. It's something else my yoga teacher used to say. You think, does that, is that nice? Would that be strawberries and watermelon, or would that be grits and, I don't know, bricks or something? So if you're saying something that's hurtful and spiteful, why would we go there? We just wouldn't. And sometimes it's always about taking responsibility back to ourselves. Nobody else on this planet needs to give us permission to go out and develop who we are. Anybody who truly loves you will always want your happiness, will always want for you to be the best that you can, and will always do everything that they can to support you. And if they're not, what is it that you're getting from being in that relationship with them? And when I say relationship, I mean dynamic. It doesn't have to be a romantic partner. So if somebody is holding you back and telling you it's a waste of time, what is it that you're getting from staying there? Maybe there is that part of you that doesn't believe, the part of you that can say, oh, well, I could have gone all the way to the top and been a saint or been a multimillionaire, but I couldn't because I had this person pulling at my heels all the time. Well, then we're using them as an excuse. And we need to let go of that illusion and be able to say, this is my choice and I'm going to follow through. And it takes guts to do it, but if we don't have guts, what are we going to do anyway? So yeah, that's what I would say on all of that.
I think that the path of forgiveness, finding yourself, and honoring yourself is the biggest path that you can ever go in your life. It's the biggest path because it requires it requires a lot of energy to move past your fearful beliefs, attitudes, your way of reacting and being present, and especially in those relationships that are closest to you, right? So I truly encourage women to go there, right? And to allow themselves to be supported in that journey. But more than anything, to truly honor their well-being above all. And I think that's the main reason why we forgive. So I really wanted to thank you for that. Do you have one, key advice that maybe we didn't mention, throughout this entire interview? That was like the most important thing that you would mention to somebody in the path of forgiveness and truly moving past old situations and letting go patterns behind.
Okay, let me think about that one for a second rather than just give you one straight away. I would say get comfortable with being vulnerable and trust that within your vulnerability you will find your greatest strength. It's easy for us to condemn, to point the finger, to hate, and it takes a lot more to come back to ourselves and say, I put myself in that situation wittingly. I've learnt from the situation that I was in. I forgive myself for the mistakes that I made in that situation. And only by being open, by being vulnerable, are we going to learn what it is that we need to learn to not repeat that mistake. So 100% let yourself be open, let yourself be vulnerable, and let yourself be soft. Our hearts are beautiful, soft creations. Why would we wear them like a shield where we have to just bounce everything off ourselves? Another lovely quote that I use with my clients often is that inside the hardest shell lives the softest creature. So if we think of a crab or a limpet, any kind of sea creature, then they're literally jelly inside of that hard shell. And when we look at somebody in our life who we think is being tough or defensive or, you know, belittling what it is that we're doing, there's a tenderness in there, there's a softness in there. So see them as a little child and speak to them in a way that they're going to understand. And speak to them with the love that you would like them to speak to you. So that was about 10 pieces of advice. That's my last one.
So I'm going to ask it. I'm going to ask it. So you mentioned about, you know, letting yourself be soft and removing those shields and, you know, living from that place. How do you, on a daily basis, allow yourself to live from that place, right? I know that, you know, there's so many different triggers and situations out there that make us just want to close. Why should we live from that place, and how can we live from that place more often?
Okay, so why we should live from that place is, it doesn't matter how many books in the world you read, how many seminars you go to, how many coaches you work with. If you can't connect with yourself, you might as well throw away the key now. You know, we're not going to go anywhere unless we learn to connect with ourselves. We can't connect with ourselves when we are dashing around at 1,000,000 miles an hour. It's just not possible. When we come back to a place of Einstein time, I'm not sure if that's a concept, you're probably more than familiar with it. So Einstein time is moving away from Newtonian time. So we're not looking at the clocks and saying we've got 10 minutes, we have to make it work, only 10 minutes, 9 minutes, 8 minutes, 7 minutes. We're able to say, I'm going to fully focus all of my attention on what it is I'm doing right now. And when we start to really go inside of the time is when everything around us slows down in such a way that we have time to think, oh, my shoulder feels cold or tense. I notice that I'm having that thought about the tires on my car for the 4th time today. I notice that I keep getting a message to go and see if my neighbour's okay, but I haven't gone yet. You know, we start to hear the thoughts that are in our head. We can identify the ones that are monkey mind, that are just incessant chatter, but we can also identify the ones that are really important to us. And when we live from that place, then we are truly tapping into both our feminine essence, but also just the real depth of who it is that we are. You know, I'm not fingernails or hands any more than I am this whole body. The me that's inside of that, the soft part inside the physical exterior, is the part that interests me both in myself and in everybody else around me. So how do we get to that part? Simple things sometimes. Like even today, I have a nice little candle on my desk.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
So creating a softer space, being able to slow down, doing things that feel good. A really, really basic piece of advice I once gave to, it was actually a friend of a friend. She said that she was really stressed and her whole day ran away with her. And I said, talk me through your morning. Well, I get up and I make my husband breakfast in my room. And I went like this for 5 minutes. And I said, and what do you do when you come out of the shower? I get dressed and then I rush out the door. I said, do you even put moisturiser on? No, I don't have time. And I said, well, how would it feel if you stopped for the 2 minutes that it takes to moisturise your body, to be slowly rubbing that lotion into your skin, to be connecting with yourself, to be physically getting into your body? You know, where are we if we're not in our body? It's our body that we send out to speak to people every day. They only see us in this vehicle, so we have to be in a way that they can relate to us. And something else that ties in perfectly with what we're talking about in terms of creating that still space, meditate. You know, sit for a couple of minutes. It doesn't have to be all day. And meditate. You can do it at the traffic lights. Just give yourself a minute to breathe, to connect with your breath, and to notice, what is it that I'm feeling? Do I feel happy today? Do I feel sad? Do I feel really excited? What is it that's going on? And a really simple way that I love to do it, and I know you were going to mention this anyway, there's miracle mantras. I've created these beautiful miracle mantras, which basically are mantras with colouring in. So I think you can probably see that nice and clearly.
Yeah.
Oh, where
I attract love and I am love and joy.
Yeah, so when we take the time to just slow down and do something like that, sit and colour in. As a child, we had no concept of time. We didn't know what came after Monday, what came before Sunday. Do we have school today? We would ask every Saturday. We didn't know. You have 6 weeks of school holidays. What's 6 weeks? Is it a long time? Oh, it's 300 days till Christmas. Is that the day after tomorrow? We have no concept of time. And then as adults, we build in this, it's almost like another stick to beat ourselves with. Oh, this was only meant to take this long and I should have had it done by now. And when we let go of all those shoulds and that pushing and striving, and we can come back to, here I am in my chair, my feet on the floor, my hands on the table, breath in my body, love in my heart. What more do we want for a happy life? Everything else is just in here and projection.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much. I wish I could pick up my book that I have for coloring and all this for stuff. I recently bought it like 2 days ago, so I'm really excited. I don't know when I'll ever finish it, but I don't care, right? I'm present with every single part of it, and that's the most important thing. Could you explain?
Finishing it is the objective.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to thank you once again. This was a really beautiful interview. We covered a lot, and I know that there's going to be lots of nuggets of wisdom for all of the viewers. Can you explain a little bit like your gift? I know that you were explained a little bit just now, but so the audience knows that you are actually offering to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I have here is the 7 miracle mantras. So essentially it's a colouring in book that comes as a PDF. All you need to do is log on to the link, which Nicole is kindly going to share somewhere for me,
yes,
and pop your details in, and this will arrive in your email instantly as an ebook. So all you need to do is print it and colour. So if you want to sit down and do it with your children, if your kids are saying, Mommy, why are you always doing that weird thing, or you've got a little sister, get them to come along and join. And just sit with you and do it. Each of the mantras that I have, they're based around, this one, I love who I am. They're all around confidence and around self-love. And if we don't have, it takes confidence to love ourselves. And it also takes love for ourselves to have confidence. But when we sit down and we colour in with these things and we're actually reading that mantra within our minds again and again and just quietly chanting it to ourselves, we get ourselves into that beautiful soft state that means that we can respond from that place as opposed to consistently reacting. So there's not, we're talking about how self-development can be fun. There's not much that's a lot more fun than colouring in when it comes to it. There's nothing difficult or challenging, but we're giving ourselves the gift of grace, the gift of time, and the gift of composure. Find me a woman out there who doesn't want to be confident and composed.
Yeah.
I don't think you will.
Yeah, definitely. That's a huge desire. So once again, thank you very much. This was fantastic. I hope that everybody enjoyed this interview. I'm going to be giving you the link, as Sophia mentioned. So I'm really excited about this interview, about everything that you learned. I know it's really juicy. So we'll be talking really soon, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Nicole. Bye-bye.
Bye.